Hey everybody, welcome back to Dental Unfiltered. I'm Matt Brown, and I'm here today with Kevin from Mango Voice. Voice over IP phone companies are the standard now in all practices, and there's a lot of things to pick from. There's just standard VoIP where it doesn't do as much, and then there's some advanced VoIP that is dental specific, and there's tons of things like anxiety about porting numbers, reliability, also what extra features they offer you. There are some VoIP providers in the marketplace that are excessively expensive, and there's some that are very effective and very affordable. And I think Mango Voice is the leader in all those areas. And I was asking Kevin to come on to talk about things today. And the place I really want to start with Kevin is, you know, let's just start with this. Tell us a little bit about Mango Voice, then we're going to some questions. So tell us a little bit about you and Mango Voice and kind of, your passion for dentistry and VoIP and kind of how it all came about.
Yeah, first of all, Matt, thanks for having me on. Congratulations to you and Andrew for building this podcast. I think for me, one of the things I definitely struggle with, I'll say, is putting myself out there. And I think anytime someone's willing to kind of lead out and help an industry is, you know, huge congrats to you for doing that. Mega Voice is a leading provider of phone services to dental offices across the US and Canada. We currently service over 10,000 locations. And, unlike a lot of, I think, our competitors and other people that do what we do, we've chosen to be vertical specific, that being dental. And so I think that helps us with a few things, Matt. One is, I think a lot of people have a lot of breadth, but they don't have a lot of depth. And this allows us to have really deep, intricate knowledge of the dental industry and what are the pain points that offices are experiencing, and how can we use our technology to be able to build products and features that make their life easier and help scale easier than they would without those.
Yeah, I think it's, in dental, there's always a choice to make, right? And it's like you can get IT that is just general IT. You can get a website company that isn't dental specific. There are so many places where you can get a dental specific provider, or you can get someone who's general. And I think it's always smart to go with dental specific because dental is a very complex service that is human based, and patients have dental anxiety, and providers know that, and providers also know the needs of the practice better when they have depth, like you said, and they're very specific. So I talk to probably a ton of dentists a month, and at events or people that contact me, or clients even. And whenever I bring up VoIP, the number one anxiety killer, or the anxiety point I hear first is fear of porting the number and the transition. Because if you think about it, like the gateway to the practice is the front desk person, and if the phones get broken, the revenue can pause, and that's giant anxiety, right? I know there's a lot of VoIP providers that have very shoddy reliability, and the communication from the VoIP provider to the client isn't the clearest, and porting numbers gets really scary when you first switch. So I know you guys are super good at this. Like I've been in your facility, I've met with your team, and I know like one thing you guys take a lot of pride in is we port the best, we port the fastest, and the transition is least painful. So tell us, like, to relieve people's anxiety to switching, tell us what makes you so good at that.
This is a great question. And funny enough, Matt, we just did an analysis. So we just took the last 2 years of all of our sales calls and put them in a model and said, give us the top 50 most asked questions that we get when people call us to ask about Mango. And you know what number one was? Porting my numbers. Can I keep my number? And talk to me about what porting my numbers mean. So we validated what you just said with data. This is the number one concern of practices. And it's a great concern. And I think you articulated it well, which is, imagine you're a practice that's been around for the last 10, 15, 20 years, and you have a number. That number is the lifeline into your practice.
Gigantic.
And yeah, it does, because part of the identity of the practice. And what happens if that number goes down? We lose production. What if we lose it? I've seen all these scenarios where practices will call us up and say, hey, I was porting, I was going to sign on with another service and they lost my number. We don't know where it's at. Can you help us? And so these things do happen. As we were building Mango, something that I'm really passionate about is people have the best experience possible when they come to Mango. That doesn't mean we're perfect, Matt, but we're going to do everything we can to be able to help you come to Mango. And I can't tell you how many times, I've seen our team, me personally, be on the phone for 3 or 4 or 5 hours with, Verizon or somebody else trying to work through issues, porting numbers and trying to get those over to us. I think something else is, you know, Andrew, who's your partner in the podcast, we've been having an issue trying to get his AT&T number over.
I've been on the text threads. You guys are helping Andrew out a lot.
That's exactly right. But you see how engaging we are and what we're willing to do, right? We'll call AT&T for you. We'll sit on hold, and when someone answers, we'll loop you back in. Don't waste 2 hours of your life. We'll do this for you. I think it's those, you know, I think in looking at the big scheme, Matt, it's those little things that are hugely impactful to what kind of experience people are going to have when they come to Mango. And that is the differentiator. And I tell people this all the time. There's other phone providers you can go to. It's the question of what kind of experience are you going to have when you go there? And that's really how Mango's been built. That's our reputation. And I think something that's important from a leadership perspective is that I live that every day. And, I think when you look on social media and other mediums, I gauge a lot here because I want to set the tone for the team that this is the most important thing for Mango Voice. And what's been incredible is what happens when you get a group of people together that buy into that. They do such an incredible job. So I would say when you look to switch your phone service, just make sure you do your homework with whoever you're going to. If it's Mango or somebody else, make sure they can port your number and talk to them and understand what that process is. What we do, Matt, is we actually measure how long it takes for each step of our onboarding process. We measure it with every single customer that comes on. And, last quarter we brought on, close to 1,100 practices. On average, it took 20 business days from when you signed with Mango to when your number ported and everything was up and running.
Dennis, listen, and sorry guys, you guys focus on perfection. Like Dennis, like hyper focus on perfection. You guys are wired that way. You're like engineers. An imperfect mouth, and you strive for perfection to get it back to where it needs to be. The real thing to remember in business and these kinds of scenarios where you're getting a service provider is perfection's never going to happen. But effectiveness is the key to success, right? So at Mango, you guys are really hyper focused on effectiveness and what is the time period it gets to effectiveness to help make sure your clients have a painless experience with that transfer. So really at Mango, the theme really is striving for maximum effectiveness in the shortest period of time.
That's exactly right. And one thing we understand deeply is if your phones go down, you're dead in the water because you are. And like we understand that deeply. And to your point, Matt, we're not perfect. We don't claim to be perfect. The difference is we'll own it and we will do everything we can to make things right and make sure that you're up and operational.
So the next subject I really want to talk about is customer service after you become a client, right? So there's a reason why you're on the show. So like here at Dental Unfiltered, we don't do sponsorships. No one can pay to get on. Like the other big behemoth, it rhymes with Steve. They can't pay to get on because none of my clients really use them. My clients that have had issues. It's very overpriced. My podcast partner, who's got coming up on 10 practices, he uses you across the board. Most of my clients use you, and that was why we brought you on. Was your customer service is probably the best. So once I port, I'm live now. Two things. One, how few dropped calls or like service interruptions are there? And two, what is your approach to having the customer service you guys have? Like, how is it that everyone raves about your customer service and the little bit of service interruptions that happen? Because you have, from my understanding from everyone else, very low service interruptions.
Yeah, very low. Truthfully, Matt, wasn't always the case as you scale any platform or if you're scaling, your offices, you inevitably run into roadblocks as you scale. And we were talking about this briefly before we started the podcast, which is how painful scale is. And, scaling anything is just a brutal experience. And so we've learned a lot of lessons along the ways of, what to do, what not to do as we scale our system. We feel really confident in where our system is and our ability to scale. And you're right, we've invested a lot of money and a lot of time, really over the last 5 years, to get our system in a place where we feel really, really confident that we can continue to scale at the rate we're scaling and create, you know, that environment where people have no service disruptions. And what's cool about us too, Matt, is we actually publicly display our uptime. You can go to status.mangovoice.com at any time.
So you guys put the pressure of put yourselves on a public scoreboard.
That's right.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, but I think it's the right thing to do, right? Because
Well, it's the product we're buying.
it's the product you're buying, but I see this all the time where it's really easy. Not let me back up. It's somewhat easy to sell people on something if you're saying, hey, we have a 99.99% uptime. It's different when you say, hey, go to status.mangovoice.com and we're fully transparent with any type of service disruption that we have. We log those on there. You can see them. We're fully transparent. And so for us, we want transparency to say, hey, don't believe our word. You can go here. It's a third-party platform. It's verified, and you can see what our uptime is. And the reality is we have a extremely, high uptime. And we haven't had, I think a major service disruption in years. This goes back, I think, to the team and what we've been able to put in place. But this is where you probably see it all the time too, is like companies will come in and say one thing, but then when the rubber meets the road, it's a totally different experience. And that's another thing that we talk about, to answer your question deeply at Mango, is, once you come from a sales process into operations, that's where what sales says becomes reality. And so as an operational team, what we talk about a lot is our job is to create that experience, because that will be the first real touch point with the customer. And that sets the tone for what kind of, experience they're going to have at Mango. People need to understand that, right? Within the team context is how important each step is on the onboarding. And then to your point, once they're onboarded, support has to keep that high level, right, of experience. And here again, we measure a lot of metrics at Mango, because metrics to us are our scoreboard, and our scoreboard tells us how we're doing, right?
Some people don't want to measure it because they don't want to know. Some companies are like, I don't want to measure it or put it out there because I would like to say I'm 99% and naivety feels good.
That's exactly right. And I think sometimes we're afraid to look at things and say, hey, there's a problem here. I love that, because how do you fix something that you can't recognize or be willing to accept as this is a problem? And so, one metric we really monitor is what's the average time it takes us to answer a call in support. So, for example, last month we did 10,665 support calls. Our average answer time was a minute 50. And so that means within a minute 50 of you calling, we're going to answer. You're talking to someone. All our support is done here in St. George, where we're based. Nobody's remote. And I think that's a big part of it too, is we wanted to make sure that we built that team that was centralized so that we would be able to really monitor it. It is easier to build that culture when everybody's there together. And I go back to this, and I said it before, there is power when a team coalesces around values. And that's really where the magic happens. And what I tell the team a lot is good teams win, great teams dominate. And we want to be a great team, because when we're a team and we're around these core values, that's where the magic happens.
It's funny. Like I have a special operations background in the military, and it's we love the scoreboard because we want to be measured, right? When you strive for excellence, or you strive for extreme success, or you strive for doing something really hard, the measurement is what drives you. Like I want to know if I'm failing or winning. I want to know if I'm 50% good or 90% good or 100% good, right? And some people can't handle that pressure. And what happens is when you focus on that and keep striving forward, you wake up one day and you look around and you're number one. And you realize you're so focused on the mission, so focused on excellence, so focused on doing things no one else has been able to do or people aren't willing to do, that you wake up one day, you look around and you're alone at the top and you're like, oh, I guess we did it. And that focus is what gets you there. If you're looking at everyone else and seeing what they're doing, you're never focusing on what gets you there. You're kind of playing catch up, right? So from a user point of view, you kind of touched on this a little bit. I have an issue as a Mango user, right? And I call in. Is it voice to voice 100%, or they're like service tickets and they have to get back to us? Like once I call, like what is the average talk time on a service call if you know that? And then what is the actual experience like? Like I'm having a problem. What is it like for me?
Yeah, great question. So the avenues that you can reach us is voice, chat, and email. Those are the three ways that you can reach out to us. So if you're busy checking people in and out and you do have a problem, you can just chat with us, right? And
And those are humans in St. George, not bots.
everything is human. There's a lot of discussion, and I think we'll get into some of this around AI and how can AI make us more efficient. I think there is practical applications for AI. What we've decided to do at Mango is to leverage some AI tools internally, but we want those interactions to be human based at all possible, especially during operating hours. We want you to be able to communicate with humans. And part of that, Matt, goes back to what you said, which is our system's a real-time system. What I mean by that, it's not like your PMS or your engagement. Our system is streaming media real time. And so oftentimes you have something that is mission critical and we need to adjust that right then. And AI bots can't do that. They need to talk to a human and they need to get that adjusted immediately. So because the nature of our system, I think we've taken a little bit different approach, is like building tools around the team to make them more efficient. But at the end of the day, yes, you're talking to humans here in St. George.
So you're not using AI to replace the humans, you're using AI to enhance the humans.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think that's the sweet spot, in my opinion. Will that change in the future? I don't know. This technology is changing so rapidly, but what we've been able to see is we've been able to take how many, because the other thing we dissect is we say, how many customers can one agent support? And that's a metric that we watch closely because that basically builds out our hiring so that we can keep, you know, the same support level. With the tools that we've built around AI internally, that number's doubled on the number of customers one support agent can handle.
That's exciting. So we deployed AI here at Energize recently to help with our call center, and our booking rate went up by 10%. And same thing, our human footprint went down a lot. And it's kind of AI babysat by humans. Humans are overseeing it, watching it. They're hopping in to correct it. We booked like 15,000 dental appointments last month with AI assisting a few people. The volume is pretty crazy, but we're doing the same thing. We're using it to enhance the individuals, not replace them, right? So getting into AI, there's a new tool you guys have that has gotten me really excited. And I've been, to be clear, most of your competitors that are kind of delving into the same space have all approached me at different times to partner with my company. And there's been a lot of reasons why I've been hesitant. And one reason I'm really hesitant is these poor front desk girls have two screens open with 20 tabs, and they're the air traffic controllers of the practice between phones, processing insurance, and they don't need another software to switch to. And every single AI, phone, VoIP solution that's been brought to me that wants to get on the show, wants to partner with my company, they have to open another tab and log in. And I know yours, you don't have to. And when I first got to see yours and we got to talk about it, it was the one that made me feel the most comfortable for the quality of workday for that front desk girl. And I think you guys put the most thought into UX and UI, which is user experience for the client, for the listeners, and user kind of interaction. I think that really is critical. And I think this is really I think where you guys are at is the first frontier of how AI is impacting patient communication in the practice. And I think a lot of people are trying to break into that frontier, and they know this is uncharted territory and it's a really good market and there's things that can happen here. But I think everyone's looking at it from the wrong point of view. And I think you guys really sat down and said, what is the user experience for this front desk girl and for the practice? And how can we use AI to make it better? And the reality is, docs who are listening, the front desks are the gateway to your practice. I can't tell you, I know you guys capture way more voice than we do. You guys capture something like so many terabytes an hour. we capture voice also, and I listen to these phone calls periodically, and I'll hear something like this. Someone will ask for implants, and the front desk girl will say this, "Oh, you don't want to do that? That's expensive." And Doc thinks their front desk girl is great because they come in early, they take the trash out, and they're awesome. And Doc doesn't have time to listen to the phone calls, and no one does. I know you guys solved that problem. You solved a lot of the problems of having it in the multiple softwares. You guys took a lot of the layered problems and peeled them all away and made it awesome. I really want to dive into your AI product. I am very excited about it. I've actually, I'm not a spokesperson for you guys. I spoke publicly about it at dental events. I think it's a critical tool that you need. Talk to me about your AI product and kind of where your motivation came from and kind of how you guys went about designing it and all the key features and how it can really help a practice.
This goes back to what we talked about earlier, Matt, which is having a very deep understanding of the dental industry, right? And to your point, and no knock to anybody, but you see all these startups coming into the, dental space, and they're building these AI features. And, I've probably talked to 100 of them myself. And it's very clear they don't understand the pain points of the practice and what drives real value. What we learned as we went through this process is a lot of these, the hype around AI came out. Truthfully, Matt, my natural personality is to be more skeptical of things. I don't believe in hype cycles because I want to think a little contrarian to what's going on. I think sometimes when you get in kind of like this tribalism, you have a tendency maybe to not really think deeply about what is the impact. And
You become just another hype man for the hype with no substance behind you.
that's exactly right. So, what is the context of this software, and how can we use it at Mango to drive operational efficiency within the practice? That was really our kind of core thesis is what do we feel like we can actually do today? And then we tend to think in 5-year chunks, Matt. So saying what should we do today? What do we think is possible in 5 years and 10 years? And that's how we modeled this out. One thing I heard consistently, because I talk to dentists every day, and consistently I heard we want every interaction with a patient documented in our practice management system. We want a central location where anytime we interact with a patient, we want that logged. I said, great. Tell me how often that happens. And the answer is not very often. Yeah. And you dive into why. And I think the answer is very simple. Let's say that I'm at the front desk and I get off a call and there's a new patient standing right in front of me. What am I going to do? Am I going to say to that patient, hey, can you hold on? I need to document this call real quick. That's okay. Yeah. And you shouldn't. I agree. Or another call comes in, right? Are you going to put that person on hold and say, hey, can you hold? I need to document. I just had a phone call. I need to document. It just doesn't happen, right? There's so much going on. And to your point, navigating multiple points within the practice is very difficult to do. So what happens at the end of the day? None of those interactions get documented. So what we decided was something that we could build today that would be really impactful is how do we automate the documentation of any inbound and outbound and voicemail into the practice. So we listen to the call, we summarize that call, and then we write that summary back into the practice management system for any inbound and outbound call. So now you have a central hub of all those communications with your patient as well as voicemail. Now, truthfully, Matt, I think there's been some benefits from this that maybe we didn't even fully understand. So I was actually talking to an office manager of a two practice. They manage two practices. And they said, our communication with our patients has actually increased. And I said, walk me through that. What do you mean? He goes, well, we just go right to the practice management system. We actually read the summary of what was talked about with that patient. Now, when I call that patient, I already have context about what this call is going to be versus the first 3 to 5 minutes of like, hey, update me on where we're at and trying to like fact find to answer their questions. So now their average call time is going down because they already know what they're going to talk about. So they can spend more time on, high impact things within the practice. That's one. Two is offices that implement this technology are saving over an hour and a half a day across their team because now they're not having to log any calls. They don't have to do any of this. So now you have an extra hour, hour and a half within the practice to say, what are high value things we can have them work on? Because we've automated this whole documentation process away. And then 3 is when you talk about what is the foundational pieces that are needed to really build good AI within practices, the number one training data that is the most impactful is voice interactions, because those voice interactions is how you train models. So call summary is one thing. We also give you the full transcription of the call, right? Now all of a sudden we have all these transcriptions that are taking place in a practice. And to give you a metric that's super interesting, Matt, is every 5 minutes we log 7,000 dental calls in our database every 5 minutes. And so now what we're doing,
You guys can data farm forever.
yeah, so we're going back to a practice. And what we're saying, so I'm doing this right now with a handful of practices, is we're now taking your calls for your last 2 years and we're downloading them, we're transcribing them, right? And then we're consuming them. And what we're saying is give us the 50 most asked questions this practice gets and rank them from what is the number one most asked question down to the least is 50, right? Well, now we know how to train the AI agent because these are statistically, if you ask a question outside of the top 50, like the probability is like 3 deviations from a mean. Like it's probably not going to happen. The other thing that's interesting is say, give us the 5 most asked services this practice gets. Now, this is where this data becomes interesting for you, Matt, is because if this is the 5 most requested services, well, let's make sure that our website and our marketing matches what the demand from the patient is coming into the practice. So now we can take the data we're getting, marry it with marketing, and start to build, some AI, call them agents, who are there to help that office be more efficient because we have the data. Like the data is the foundational piece. And so when you think about what you want to do to implement AI in your practice, getting Mango AI really is this foundational piece. And now we're going to take this foundation and we're going to start building upon it. Lastly, we feel like the best way for AI to be really, really effective is it's got to be married really tightly with your practice management system. And that's another area that makes Mango really unique is we're grateful that we have really good relationships with the practice management systems. And, we're working with a lot of them to say, how do we create deeper integrations and how do we create additional, especially AI features that are going to help the office be much more efficient?
You're talking about the marketing part of it, right? And like I said, we booked 15,000 dental appointments last month for new patients. So we collect similar data, right? And a really interesting third layer to your data that I recommend is you're collecting data of what are the top 5 things they're asking for. You should pull data of what are the 5 things they actually do. So a lot of times patients are like, I need an implant. They have no dental IQ. They show up in the practice. Doc goes, no, we can salvage your tooth. You need a crown. Implant patient asking for implant from implant ad became a crown. What we've discovered at Energize is that implant ads develop as many crowns as crown ads develop implants. And docs don't visually see that. And I think that's a third back end data of patients, 200 patients called asking for crowns off of this pay-per-click Google campaign, right? But 60 of them actually ended up getting implants, 20 got endo, and the rest got crowns, and a bunch of them didn't get anything. I think that'd be really, I just from my point of view, the stuff I deal with, I think it'd be really awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. And, Matt was recently here in St. George and we went to dinner and spent some time together. And if you remember, Matt, this is some of what we talked about, which is getting greater visibility into the funnel and what's actually happening throughout the funnel, which is another area that we're super interested in and spending some time on. And so we get a little bit farther down the path, we should talk more about that.
Listen, I love coming to Mango. I love spending time with you and Richard. If you guys were doing a development meeting for that kind of stuff, you want me to fly out, I would fly out and just be there as an advisor, and you guys could call me when you wanted to, and I would keep my mouth shut until you needed me. But I see kind of the whole thing from click all the way to collections because of our relationship with DI. I get the whole data stream from being end, and we have a really good idea of actual patient behaviors versus perception. And I'll tell you this: the perception is nowhere near the reality. They're so removed. Like docs perceive this is the behavior. The reality is way different. When you start quantifying it, it's very different. So going back to your AI product, when I talk to docs, right? They start these are great companies, by the way. Scheduling Institute, all these phone coaching companies are amazing. And they're very expensive and they're very human intensive. They're gonna call and secret shop you and take up a spot on your calendar that's never coming. They're gonna kind of work over your staff a little bit. And the reality is sometimes staff isn't really receptive to it all. Some of it can come off very anecdotal. They don't trust the coaching. But I know your software kind of can gauge like with a meter the quality of the call and the sentiment of the call. And if I was a doc, and I think your product's like $3.99 a month. Am I right on that?
So it actually depends on the office. So I think another caveat to what we've been talking about is the other thing we understand is how to price this so that it's very cost effective for a practice. What I mean by that is if you're a practice with 3 phones, you should pay much different than if you're a practice with 10 phones. And so we based it on the number of phones you have to be really, really competitive. So on the low end, you're $79 a month. What that's going to give you is call summaries, full transcript, and what you're getting at, which is full sentiment analysis on every call. And then it goes up from there. And so we feel like we've priced this really competitively. Part of the reason we can do that, Matt, is we're a privately held company. We don't have any outside investors. And so we can be very like thoughtful about our pricing and do whatever we want. And the reason we've priced it the way we have is we feel like this is a tool every practice should have. And we wanted to price it that way, where we felt like the cost benefit analysis was there for them to adopt it.
Yeah. So the one thing that really got me excited about the sentiment part was like I've interacted. I mean, being in our position, I have all these different companies that end up kind of like peripheral on these practices. They know we exist. They know we're recording phone calls. We're generating traffic. They always want to communicate with us, explain their point of view, how they want to do things. A lot of times I find it's not really based on a lot of data. It's based on some anecdotal beliefs where me and you both base everything we do on our strategy based off of math, right? And, you know, docs are going to spend 20, 30, 50, $10,000 on these coaches, right? And the effectiveness kind of may or may not be there because they don't have like these individual humans don't have the data collection we have, right? And for Doc to have the sentiment meter, if he went through and listened to a bunch of phone calls, let's say he went through and he had 100 phone calls in a day and he sampled 5 of them and sat down and listened to them, right? He may have sampled the 5 best ones. I mean, he doesn't have time to listen to 100 phone calls. But if he had the sentiment meter and he went through the practice management software that he's already logged into and clicked the link and looked at it and picked 20 of them in a row, he could sample 20 or 30 or 40 in the amount of time listen to 5 phone calls. He just click through them and see the sentiments and see it. And your sentiments are very accurate because, you know, the amount of data you collect. And it makes it very effective. Can you explain kind of the sentiment meter and kind of like good, bad, in the middle and kind of how you gauge that? Because I think the transcripts are good. I don't know if docs are going to read. I think the staff reads the transcripts to have good, active, personalized communication with the patient. I think the sentiment meter for a doc is very critical for gauging the effectiveness of a staff. Can you explain the sentiment meter, how you came up with it, and kind of what the range is?
Yes, when you think about sentiment, you're doing a few things. You're listening for tonality, you're listening for inflection, you're listening for keywords. And just like any technology, Matt, is it absolutely perfect? No. Is it really good? We think so. And where I would maybe push back a little on the transcript is within our system, you can go pull it up. And I'm going to try to visually tell you what this looks like. You have your call recording, you hit play, it plays the call recording. And then below it, you have these lines that says patient and office. And it's color coded where it said, gray is neutral, green is good, red is bad. So you could pull that up, Matt, pull up your transcript and just scroll right over to the red. The red is bad. And then it's going to correspondingly pull up the transcript. So now you're listening and you're reading to seeing why that patient is potentially upset. But to your point, imagine at the end of the day, you just go to Mango, you go to a filter and you say, give me every call that had negative sentiment today.
Oh, that's a great way to do it.
And now you'll get every call that day that had negative sentiment. You go over there. I want to quickly go to the spot that was bad and I want to review that. You literally could review 10 calls in probably 10 or 15 minutes. And you've got a good sense of like, okay, what are some areas that we're really missing? And I think the point you're getting to, which is a factual point, phones are still the main artery into a practice. This is the main conduit into a practice. And for most practices, that is a black box. It is such an unknown.
Yeah, it's a big cloud of mystery.
Yeah. And so what we're really focused on now with Mango AI and some other tools that we're building that when you see them, Matt, you're going to be like, duh, that's a no-brainer, but nobody's doing it. And it's going to create such operational efficiency and transparency in the practice that we feel like you have to adopt Mango because of the operational efficiency it's going to create. But I think what you're saying, which is true, which is, hey, docs, hey, office manager, hey, if you're at a multi-location, maybe you have a manager of multiple locations. How do we start giving you the data to say this is how your team is performing on the phone?
User reporting per location.
That's right. And some other things. So we're rewriting all our reporting right now. We're also building some operational tools that are going to be, I'm super pumped about.
I want to see your roadmap now. I'm excited.
Listen, Matt and I would consider Matt a really good friend, and we talk openly. So I'm happy to share that with you, Matt.
I get excited when you come up with new stuff.
But my point is let's open up this box for practices, and let's say here it is, so that you can make those changes within your practice, because your ability to be really good on the phone is one of the best areas to drive additional revenue for your practice.
I talk to docs, and we offer a lot of training and case presentation and patient experience. And I ask docs a question like, who's the most important person in the practice any given moment, or the most important team member any given moment? And he'll say, oh, me. I'm like, no, it's definitely the front desk girl. The person answering the phones is number one, because they don't get past them, they can't get to you, right? That's the gateway. And I think, going to the box analogy of the phone ops, I think it can go two ways. I think it can be a treasure chest, or it can be a Pandora's box. And I think sometimes docs are scared because they kind of know it's a Pandora's box. They kind of know, like, they walk past the front desk and they hear them say something and they get that sick feeling in their stomach. Oh, why'd she say that? And they don't want to address it. And what they don't want to know is they don't want to know how frequently that's happening. And if they can go in Mango voice and kind of like, this is going to sound weird, kind of safely open the box without it becoming this giant mess, they can kind of like digest it better because it's done in a organized fashion. They can go in and say, okay, all bad sentiment. And they can look at the time of day, who the person was, look at kind of all the gauges. They can find the recoaching moments. And now that because the real problem with the Pandora's box side is when they open it up, like, how do I fix this mess? It's outside their skill set. You're kind of organizing it in a way where they can see it and digest it and say, okay, I even can come up with a plan now to fix this. I can take these phone calls, sit down with my front desk girl on Friday, our admin day in the morning, and say, hey, these are things I don't like that you said, or this is why we could have done this better. And you don't have to go outside for, $20, $30, $50,000 consulting packages. You can make a real stab at fixing the critical pipeline without having to do it. So I really think there's two. If you have a great front desk ops, it can be a treasure chest and it's awesome. You don't mind opening up and looking at it. On the other side, when Doc walks past that front desk person and hears them say things, he's got a sick feeling in his stomach. That's the Pandora's box side. And the reason why they don't want to open it is they don't even know where to start. And you guys are kind of giving that perfect starting point.
We think so. And I think this is where, additional AI features become really impactful, which is how do we create essentially this idea of what could you have done better on this call? Because what we don't want, and nobody wants this, is nobody wants to make their staff feel scared. That's not right. But how do we get tools, to your point, that can give the practice across the board just insights and prompts and like a better understanding and kind of align everybody on what needs to take place on these calls. So I think you're spot on. This is definitely one of the areas that we're really hyper focused on right now. And I think we have some very innovative ways that we're trying to do this. So we'll have to talk at the end of the year, Matt, and do some updates on a few of these things.
Yeah, for sure. No, we definitely will. So I want to wrap this up in a second. So it's I think like you said, AI is this buzzword now, right? And in my opinion, as a dental professional who looks at practices, dissects them, digests them, I look at dental intel all the time and everything. I think the two biggest areas where AI can augment the effectiveness of humans in the practice is first phone ops, without a doubt. I think second is definitely treatment planning. I think if we can streamline treatment planning and give doc more time for human communication, where he's just editing a treatment plan instead of building it from scratch, I think those two areas is where you're going to see the biggest kind of force multiplier human improvement of like the human can spend more time on critical tasks with the human and less time on logging or doing a manual labor thing that doesn't make sense. I think is of course phone ops and I think treatment planning myself. So I think this is really awesome. I think there's a lot of companies using AI as a buzzword and putting it out there as a sales tool and like a catch-all and like a kind of a hot word to get people to talk to them. And there really isn't a lot of substance behind it. And I know I'm involved with a lot of companies in the dental space. I'm involved with Archie, you guys, DI, a lot of companies. And I feel like there's a lot of innovators and a lot of people that are just taking off the shelf AI crap and kind of gluing it into their software and saying, oh, we have AI now. And I think the effectiveness of that is nowhere near the effectiveness of I know for a fact from talking to you and your team, you guys didn't buy off the shelf stuff and drop it into your software. You guys built your stuff pretty much from zero. And all your conversation models are based on data that you built from zero. And I think that approach is where the effectiveness comes from. I think the reason why other companies don't do it that way is it's incredibly taxing, incredibly expensive, and incredibly hard. But really, everything in life worth doing should be that hard. And I think consumers or practice owners need to be aware of like someone just saying there's AI, no substance behind it. It's off the shelf crap versus like built from scratch, purpose built AI like you guys did. And I think that's really critical.
I agree with you. And I think, anytime I talk to a dentist who's like, hey, I want to put an AI voice agent in my practice, I say, okay, what is your expectation of this? Well, I wanted to book an appointment. And when you think about a schedule, just the scheduling alone within a practice,
Complex.
it is so complex and it's so nuanced per location that if you give some company that doesn't understand that access to your calendar, listen, the phone's going down to one thing, Matt.
Clogging the calendar mess.
Yeah, you want to piss a practice off more than anything, mess with their calendar, like mess with their schedule.
Not just piss off doc, piss off dental assistant, hygienist, office manager. Everybody gets mad. The calendar gets messed up. Front desk person, phones get messed up. Okay, I'm hanging out eating pizza. Anything else, bro? The calendar will upset the entire staff.
That's exactly right. We're talking like full nuclear, right? And it should. And so when you're thinking about talking to these companies, one thing I always tell them is you have to talk to them about what do you understand about scheduling within a dental practice? What do you know about our schedule? It's not as easy. These models inherently can't just come in and be like, "Oh yeah, I get it." It takes a ton of training, and that's why I go back to this data, right? Mango has over 1 billion dental phone calls. And at some point, like the data becomes diminishing, but this good training data is how you make these agents really good. And so just my advice to a practice is just be very thoughtful on how you approach AI in your practice and make sure you're working with companies, to your point, Matt, who one understand the market and two really are trying to build very thoughtful products rather than a shotgun approach. Let's see what sticks.
We have to wrap this up. One thing I kind of want to add to that is, when we were designing Energize and my team was working on that early in Energize, I hung out in a local practice and kind of watched for a day, and I realized the place I needed to sit was next to the front desk girl. And what I decided to do was every single Monday for a good period of time, I went from one practice to another, just sitting next to the front desk girl, learning front desk ops. And they are the air traffic controller for the practice. I knew if I was putting patients in the practice, I had to understand how she was handling it with the schedule and stuff. And what you said is spot on. If you mess with the schedule, you as a provider, you will alienate the entire practice. And what'll happen is that entire practice will have a mutiny, and they'll say, "This goes or we go." And you don't want to be. You're done. You're done. Completely done. 100%. Well, we need to wrap this up. Kevin, do you have anything else you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Matt. One is, I'll just say this, Mango feels incredibly fortunate to be in such an incredible industry. The dentists, the office managers I've talked to, there's just so many amazing people, and I mean that genuinely. And I think there's a lot of really good companies who are trying really hard to build solutions. And we just feel grateful to be a part of it, to have partners like you, Matt, who we enjoy spending time with and getting to know. And I will say this year at Mango, for me personally, is probably the most excited that I've ever been because of the things we're working on and the impact we think they're going to have to the practice. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to save a lot of human toll and effort after this year. From the little things I've heard, and we've had lots of conversations. I think I'm pretty excited about what Mango's doing too. And guys, I spend a lot of time with Kevin when I can, and every time I do, he says something else to me that really gets me excited. And I have no financial relationship with Kevin. He doesn't pay me or anything, but docs come to me and say, "Hey, what's the best thing I can do for my front desk ops?" And I'm like, "If you give Mango voice," they go, "Yeah. Do you know about their AI product?" No, you should go get it. I was actually speaking to the American Academy of Clear Aligners in Michigan last week, and this question came up about front desk ops and sales. I said, "Do you have Mango?" And like half the room raised their hand. I was like, "All of you got to call your Mango reps and get the AI product because it'll change your life." Hey guys, thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, share. We don't sell sponsorships. You cannot pay to get on Dental Unfiltered. We select these companies based on Andrew Vallo's use and my experience in the marketplace. Andrew Vallo is coming up on practice 10 and 11 right now. He uses Mango universally in every single practice. I have 250 practices we service, and I would say over half of them use Mango, and my clients never complain about service, and we wouldn't have Mango on because in the marketplace, we believe they are the best product. So guys, thank you so much for tuning on. Please like, subscribe, and share, and have a great day.